Welcome back to Balance Redefined Radio. I'm Connie Sokol, your host, and I'm so thrilled today to have back Dr. Trish. That's what we like to call her, Trish Barrus, who is incredible. If you have not listened to my other podcast, please, I implore you to get on and listen to the wisdom and the coping skills and the everyday things to put into your life to live happier for yourself and your family. These are crucial, important life skills, the things that we need to learn in school and we don't get taught. And these are right here for you. So if you don't know Dr. Trish, I'm just going to give you a very quick rundown. She is a professor, she is a clinician, and she's been working with clients for 20 years, especially with addiction, pain management, but particularly also with depression and anxiety, mental wellness. And that's what we're going to focus on today. So welcome, Dr. Trish.
Thank you, Connie.
So wonderful to have you again, to be able to have these series that we're doing. And we're going to do a two-part today on this anxiety, dealing with it as a woman and then dealing with it, or as a man, but dealing with it as a person and then with your children, because this is just so epidemic. Have you seen a huge increase over the last 5 to 10 years in anxiety? What's on your side? What are you seeing with this?
Oh yeah, and I talk to professionals all the time, especially clinicians, and they're saying it is an epidemic, especially with college kids. We're not quite sure what's going on with our teenagers and college kids, but you've seen the suicide rates have gone up, everything's gone up. And the interesting thing is, who knows what's causing it? I would say it's a myriad of things probably, including diet, including the environment, including social media. We've seen suicide anxiety rates go up dramatically since the year social media was introduced.
I hear that so often. And what is it about that that combines with that or creates that anxiety or is attributed to that? Do they have any clear understanding of what it is? Is it the comparison factor? Is it the time spent on that so that they're not doing healthy hobbies and healthy mental wellness things? What are some of the factors that they're finding?
I think what you're talking about is absolutely right. Comparison. I mean, everybody sees what everybody else is doing. I'm not invited to that party, or there's a lot more bullying online. But also, I think it isolates kids and people. Again, you're isolated from normal social interaction is because you're in your room with this phone or even in public with this phone, and it tends to isolate you even more, which causes anxiety. We don't know how to communicate that well anymore.
Yes. You are so spot on. And I see this with particularly adults, I think especially for women, where we are wired for connection and for healthy relationships, and we verbalize and we connect. And so when we have the synergy, we're able to sort of have therapy with each other and then we move on. But you see a lot of that now, like you're saying, that isolation, that comparison. And so now people are withdrawing, they're not reaching out unless they have a Pinterest worthy thing to share. So as we're talking about, factors that contribute to anxiety, those all make sense to me as why anxiety has increased. What, however, could be the difference between someone saying to me, man, I just feel stressed or I'm so anxious about these things, and then more of a clinical, anxiety of someone is really crossed a line and it's affecting their quality of life on a daily basis and they may not even realize it. What are some of those symptoms where it's not just, wow, I'm spending a little too much time on social media, I should back off, but it's got to a place where it's really affecting their lives?
Okay, let me just say one other thing about social media. We're focusing on us instead of outward. It's all about us. And when we're with people, it's all about what picture am I going to take or how am I going to communicate this to other people? So again, it's not about the conversations and the relationships you're having. It's about how do I promote myself kind of, and that always,
Divides. Yes.
Anxiety. So 18% of the population has anxiety, severe anxiety, and 1 in 10 people get help, which is really sad because then we're dealing with all this anxiety all the time instead of getting help for it. But it's excessive worry, it's obsessions and compulsions. OCD is part of anxiety. It can be a part of anxiety. Flashbacks, trauma. If someone is dealing with excessive trauma of something that they've dealt with that they cannot deal with appropriately just by themselves, that it constitutes probably clinical anxiety. But it's just not being able to get out, this worrisome feeling that irritability can be it as well, but just not being able to overcome. And a little anxiety is good because it helps us. It spurs us on to do things. But if you're so anxious that you can't sleep or you can't eat or you're always obsessing about something, that's probably clinical and you need to get some help.
I love that kind of clarity of if it's affecting your sleep, if it's affecting your relationships, if it's affecting you being able to feel peace and being able to understand that there are things in your life you cannot control, and you're going to have to move through that with some coping skills. Because I know, especially with women or even men, but job things, but most especially for women, kids leaving home, or there's transitions. Maybe they now get a job or they're switching jobs, and they have all these dynamics, especially. And again, I speak to women just because our role is so variegated. We have different gears that we're shifting all the time. So if you're dealing with anxiety, that's going to flood down into your family, right? So what if a woman is listening or a man is listening and they're thinking, you know what, I get that. I really find myself being so stressed about that presentation at work, or I'm stressed about what the choices that my adult children are making or whatever. What are some things that they can do? Just first gateway, what are some things that they can do to deal with that?
Well, first of all, you got to be in tune with yourself. But let me talk just a little bit too about what goes on in the brain with anxiety.
Oh, love it.
A few years ago, what they did is well, they're always doing this, but doing experiments on the brain to find out what's going on in the brain when something happens. And they did MRIs on the brain. And people who are anxious and depressed clinically, their emotional part of the brain lights up, but the logical reasoning part of the brain shuts down. And so what happens is you don't have this captain of your emotional ship kind of helping you here to say, you're being unrealistic. This isn't really working for you. You don't have to worry about that, or you're overcompensating or whatever it is. It's not working. And so that emotional part of the brain and impulsive part of the brain, and especially in kids, when that lights up again, and because their brain isn't developed fully yet anyway. And so when that lights up, there's a particular problem, because again, it's all impulsive, just on the spur of the moment decision making. And so, yeah.
And when there's that impulsive decision making, does that generally mean they're doing something that's not helpful, or it's OCD, or what kind of decisions does it lead to?
Well, it's just impulsive. I mean, it's like, because they're not thinking it through. And so again, it can be, I don't want to live anymore, or this person's bullying me, so I'm going to just, go get a gun, or what. I mean, that's really,
those extremes. But it's leading to that. What I'm hearing from you is that it's magnification. So what happens is they feel something, and it starts with a normal feeling of, oh, did I offend that person? And then it goes to the next and the next and the next. And before you know it, they're curled up in a ball and they can't function because of a train of thought. Is that right?
Exactly. And also what it does is, again, anxiety causes chemical imbalance in us. We know that from abuse or things like that cause anxiety. It changes the chemistry in the brain. And a lot of people have adrenal fatigue, and they don't even understand that they have adrenal fatigue. And that means that cortisol is all messed up, which is, a anxiety reducing chemical. But, if you're constantly on that, the brain is just saying, that's how my life is. This is how I feel all the time, when it's unnatural to feel that way.
Wow. And so then it sounds like it becomes a new norm for someone to feel that high stress all the time. So then maybe it's strange for them to not feel that high stress. And then they're thinking, I'm not normal if I don't feel stressed or worried about something.
Exactly. And then they start sabotaging. It sounds weird, but sometimes you don't even know what peace feels like or happiness feels like to you, because you've never felt that for a while. And so, yeah, that you'll sabotage till you feel anxious again.
Yes. So how can someone, I love this because I can see this. I can see this in my children. I can see this in women that I work with. I can see this in different times in myself. I've had to talk myself down from ledges where I've had experiences that are really big and they're kind of life-changing opportunities. And I'm, can't sleep at night, and I'm like talking myself down from it in the morning. Like, I'm just going to minimize it. I'm going to put it back to normal. I'm going to just, I'll still go forward after this day. But sometimes, those early kind of coping skills are so helpful if we can get it in that first gateway to just pull it back to center. I know that I work with my kids on this too. So what are some pull it back to center things they can do, especially if you're talking about chemistry things and now habits and behaviors, there's got to be this frontline assault that we can move forward on so that we can start taking care of this.
Well, we hear about this all the time, but it is true. Exercise,
Uh,
being proactive, doing something in your life, because the more you just sit and just veg or worry, the worse it's going to be. So getting out and being active and exercising. I like to say, walk and talk, I mean, really with a friend, go walk, but then talk. I mean, that's your therapy session kind of with your.
yes.
And then watch your diet. Sugar's terrible. Sugar makes your mood swings go up and down, and sugar is in everything. So we have to really, I mean, there's a lot to be said about, organics and food that is just really feeding us. Protein, especially for kids, every 4 hours protein. Just something little, whether it's peanut butter, whether it's string cheese or yogurt or something like that. Because again, that's helping the brain stabilize and growing the brain in the way it should be. And for adults, that's important as well. And then again, one of the things that I tell my patients all the time is writing lessons. It acts as a purging mechanism for us. So I tell people, write the things down that are bothering you, that are causing tremendous anxiety for you, and then throw them away. Don't keep them. Throw them away. This is a purging mechanism. And so we know that writing does that. But then not only stay in the negative, but write the positive that's going on in your life. I'm a positive psychologist, so being optimistic, being grateful, being all those things. It's hard when you're anxious, but you can train yourself, and then the anxiety goes down.
Oh, that is so true. I just did that this morning. I've gotten into this habit of, I noticed when there was a lot of good stress, and I think that's important to emphasize that too, that it doesn't have to be all this negative. It can be a lot of good things, and now you're worried you won't perform. You're worried you won't make it to this next zone of genius that you're going to want to get into, or this next level, right? And I had all of these different opportunities. I could find myself waking up first thing in the morning and just this feeling of dread. And I had not experienced that. And I thought, where is this coming from? And I started using an abundance meditation so that when I first woke up, even before I did anything else, I would just say a prayer, and then I would just do this abundance meditation. And it was an affirmation of the things that I wanted, the things that I knew that I could do, and I could rely on. For me, I can rely on divine influence to do whatever it is that needs to be done. And so that actually helped me pull down that feeling and pull it back to, okay, I can handle this today. And that same thing happened this morning. There was a situation I don't have control over to do with my children, and I was worried about them, but I had to just go into that abundance meditation, know what I could control, know what I couldn't, ask for divine influence to other things that I couldn't control, kind of that serenity prayer almost thing.
Yeah.
But that actually helped me. Have you found that abundance meditations or positive affirmations, those kinds of things, do those help others on a general scale?
Yes, as long as people believe them. I mean, if you're just saying something you don't believe about yourself, then that gets hard. But I think talking and meditation and all that stuff is really good. But the research shows out there, number 3 is writing. So just not meditation, it is writing those things down, because they become more concrete. And this isn't on the computer, because the computer is only the analytical part of your brain. When you write, it encompasses the whole part, everything, the creative part, everything part of your brain.
You are so spot on. In fact, we had some conversations a few years back with some people, and that's when I started going back to doing my journal by hand, just a gratitude journal. I don't write everything, that is too long, but I do a gratitude journal at night. And I know everybody's heard about a gratitude journal, but I think what's been key for me, what you're talking about with this writing, is that I'll write down what I call tender mercies, but different things that have been little blessings in my life, not just that I'm grateful for, but I could definitely see a divine influence in my life. And again, for those that are listening, whatever that looks like for you. But I have noticed a shift that as I write that with my pen, you are so right. I am all engaged, and it's going from my brain to my pen. And then I have this sort of pause time between what I'm thinking and what I'm writing that is creating that emotion. And what was it I was reading the other day? Was it John Medina? But they were talking about emotion has to be attached to it. Otherwise, the brain doesn't recognize it as fully. Is that right?
Exactly. Well, emotion prompts you. It just helps you feel what you're thinking a lot more. And so again, when you think about things from your childhood and stuff like that, I mean, this is kind of interesting, because you remember the things that were emotional, and they might be even the bad things, but those are the things you remember, because that's the thing that the flight or fight, the adrenaline that happens in your brain, which then makes it more concrete, then kind of sometimes the nice and happy things that you think about. So yeah.
That makes total sense. So if a woman or a man comes into you and they're like, hey, I have got this anxiety. I've tried doing writing. I've tried doing exercise in my diet. I've tried doing abundance meditations. I've tried doing these exercises that you're talking about, and I still feel debilitated. Like I find myself some days I just can't, I don't even want to leave the house. What would you suggest for someone dealing with that?
Well, if it gets to be that bad, then they probably need to go talk to someone because they're stuck. They're stuck in something, and it may even be an unconscious thing. Sometimes I see people who don't even realize or know why they're anxious. They just are anxious. And again, it can be a chemical imbalance. Magnesium is really good. If you have anxiety, magnesium is a great supplement that you ought to be taking, because if we're depleted in magnesium, we'll always feel anxious. For a man, get your testosterone checked. I see that all the time now. Anxiety is low testosterone and we don't know why, but it's causing tons of anxiety now. Yeah.
Wow. And it's probably pretty unlikely, I would say, for a man to think, oh, my testosterone's low. That's probably why I'm feeling anxious, right? So it sounds like maybe getting your blood work, getting checked, just making sure all your levels are at where they're supposed to be, because it sounds really chemically based.
A good physical is really imperative, because again, if something's off, no matter what you do with the self-talk and things like that, that'll help a little bit. But if your chemicals are off, I'm a psychologist, but I work with medical doctors all the time because I really truly believe in that. Get everything going well, and then you can decide, where's my self-talk? How is my self-talk? What are the messages I'm sending to myself? Because again, thought processes cause emotions. So whatever we're thinking is causing the anxiety. So we have to be aware of that.
And get back to controlling what those original thoughts are. You know, that's so interesting. I know my daughter struggled with anxiety and with a little bit of OCD, where it just, she would have to get straight A's. And I'm like, I'm a B pluser. Like, just, you're good. A's and B's are great. Don't worry about it, right? And just do your best. And she just had to get A's. But she went into a therapist and was talking with the therapist that we had found and we loved. And the therapist kind of worked her through and said, okay, so you're taking your test and you don't have the right pencil. And then you start thinking, I'm not going to be able to focus. I won't be able to remember the answers. I think I'm going to fail it. And then if I fail, I won't get my scholarship. And I don't get my scholarship, I won't get into college. And then he funneled her down and said, and I'm going to live in a box. So after that, it was a trigger phrase for her that when she started cycling, is what we called it. She started cycling, and on that cycle, she was getting magnified. Then she would say, one of us would say, are you going to live in a box? And then she could laugh and go, okay, I'm magnifying, right? So are there some things that you teach your clients that are things like that they can self-assess and say that we'll talk about medication in just a second, but say they're going through their day, are there some things that you do with them to help them sort of say, oh, I'm doing it again, I can do this?
Oh, I love that. I love that. A phrase that just kind of wakes you up a little bit to what you're doing. I think it's just perfect. I always have my patients kind of say, okay, what's bothering me? Because, sometimes we get irritated or bugged and stuff, and we really don't know what the underlying issue is. And a lot of times the number one phrase I hear in my office is, I'm not good enough. And so again, if that is the basic underlying issue to all your anxiety, then again, being able to figure out how and have someone help you through that process. Because if you don't feel like you're good enough, you're always going to feel anxious.
Absolutely. And then comes in that comparison thing. And then you add in social media. And then before you know it, it's a lost cause feeling for the day, because you're like, I'm behind the 8 ball before I even get out of bed. So why get out of bed, right?
Right.
Wow. So for some people listening, they're going to be feeling like, yes, and I have tried and I don't know how to get past it. What are some of the medication things, with the understanding that we're talking about not just popping a pill, we're talking about behaviors and changing those, but I'm also kind of combining them to try to work with that chemical imbalance that might be there. What are some options that people may have?
Again, exercise and the things we talked about, those are the basic things that you need to be doing. And then a doctor's going to be able to tell you, okay, you are way off on your adrenals. Let's get your adrenals, or your thyroid. Even thyroid problems can cause it. So let's get those. And then eating right, and then doing the things we talked about. But, then coming back to, okay, what are the major messages I send to myself, and catching yourself every day. And even at the end of the day, Did I feel good? Did I not feel good? What were the things I was telling myself? And changing those. The neural pathways in the brain are like a rut in the road. And those messages we send to ourselves can be forever messages that we've been thinking about forever. And it takes practice, practice, practice to change those messages. But we have to be aware first of what we're doing. And yeah.
Go ahead.
And so, when you're talking about your daughter, yeah, that's what she had to do is, what am I telling myself? And it's a spiral down a lot of times. If this and this and this, and so really getting to the bottom of it. And the bottom of it is, yeah, I'm just don't feel good enough about myself. And so therefore I've got to help with that process.
So that awareness sounds like the gateway of all things. Okay, I have these feelings. I can tell I'm dealing with anxiety. Okay, the next step is, what are the simple things that I can do, those gateway things that I can do, the exercise, the diet, the writing, and all of those things, checking your blood levels, your hormones, your magnesium, all of those things. And then if you're still not seeing a shift, you're still feeling, again, it's impairing your quality of life, right? We all have those anxious moments. We all have, oh, I don't feel great or whatever, but we don't want our emotions to be the driver, because otherwise the peach isn't ripe and then suddenly we're all upset, and that's not a way to live either. So what I'm hearing you say is more of awareness and then a coping skill, and then kind of assessing that level of impact on your life. I know someone I talked to years ago was talking about Truth Lies Journal, and they said what helped them with being able to deal with anxiety was being able to, when a thought came, being able to come back to a place of, is that true? Is there evidence of that being true? Have you done anything like that, or do you recommend anything like that?
No, I think that's absolutely right. But again, it's being aware of what you're saying to yourself over and over and over again. Yeah, is this true? Proving it to yourself that it's not true, and looking for the thing. We focus too much on our weaknesses and what we're not, instead of our strengths. And I tell people to go back to their strengths. What is it that you are not only good at, but your characteristics that can help you over some of these things? Instead of all this negativity, go to the positivity. What's going well in your life, what you're doing well, how you are, all those sorts of things.
I love that. And maybe, as I love that emphasis, and studies show so much of that, focusing on your strengths, you'll develop those weaknesses as you go, but you have this positive driver that gives you energy, gives you motivation. So what it sounds like to me you're saying is, as you focus on those strengths, then you can look for examples of where you've done that before. No, I can do hard things. I did that before. I gave birth to 4 children. I didn't have an epidural on one of them, even though I wanted it. Being able to go back and say, I've done hard things. I was able to forgive that neighbor for that thing that happened. No, I'm not a mean-spirited person. I don't need to be afraid that I'm being mean or rude or whatever. I see a lot of that when I'm talking to women who are dealing with anxiety. It's a lot of how others perceive them. Like,
Yes.
did they think they were a bad person? Did they think that they were offensive? Did they think that they didn't say the right thing, right? And so kind of as a closure to this first part, are there any little tips or any ideas or thoughts that you can give to women to sort of push back on that and combat that, where they're not so anxious in their conversations with other women, particularly, in that worried about how they're coming off, and instead of kind of like reading their face to see if what they're saying is the right thing and did they do it okay, right? We're back in 7th grade. We've all been there. So do you have any thoughts or ideas of how we can deal with that?
I don't really do any exercises. I just teach principles, and then people can. But one of the things that, if we're curious about people, if we're too worried about what they're thinking about us, that's going to make us anxious. But did I say that right? Or what did I do? But it's when we're curious about people and curious about them and asking them questions about themselves, and having a relationship, and outward thinking is so much better, because the other way you are going to be self-centered and what did I do wrong? But the other way is outward focused.
Oh, and that is so good. And that's so true. I have seen that in my own life, where if I've gone into a social situation, which sometimes stresses me out, because I feel like, especially if it's in an arena that I'm not familiar with, and I'm with a lot of people who are experts or whatever, I can start feeling really small, really fast. And then you're exactly right. My whole focus is asking them questions, finding out about what they do, what their life is. And before you know it, I'm not even thinking about how I don't have any of those skills, and I'm not going to sit there and compare, but I'm trying to feel like I'm genuinely interested in what they're doing. And you're right. When you go into that mode of, I'm genuinely interested in you, even if I only talk to you for 1 minute or 5 minutes, I really want to know about what you do. You're right. That whole mindset shifts, and you're not worried about Does your dress look good? Oh, you gained 5 pounds last, 2 weeks. You're not thinking that. You're really just thinking about that person and being with them. So you're spot on with that.
Most people aren't worried about what you're looking like too much and things like that. Again, we think that, but it's irrational thinking, right? And again, it goes back to, I might have gained 5 pounds, but my hair sure looks great today, or whatever it is, I mean, it's again, focusing on what is good about you and being able to promote that.
Oh my goodness, you are so right. I remember I had gained 10 pounds a few years ago, and I did not want to go to a social function because I was sure everyone would know that I had gained 10 pounds because I talk about being fit and fabulous, right? So ridiculous. It reminds me, just to wrap up, it reminds me of the movie The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith. And do you remember he's like a junior for I can't remember the name, is it E.F. Hutton or something? Anyway, but it's it's a firm. And he has to come for this interview, but then he got arrested in the middle of the night while he's trying to paint his apartment. He's trying to take care of his little son because the wife has left. He's for parking tickets. They're arresting him for parking tickets. So he runs to the interview because he only has one shot. And he has no shirt and he's got pants. And the man's like, what am I supposed to do with this? What do I say to people about this interview? And he said, well, if he didn't have a shirt, he must have had some really nice pants. I mean, just handled it. Instead of being anxious and then just self-sabotaging, he just handled it. And I love that. I love that moment. I think that teaches us we can deal with this. We can cope with these things that come in our lives, and we can put them back to a minimal spot where they belong. We don't have to let them get magnified and take over who we are or the joy of the life that's before us. So I love this. Stay with us because check out part 2. We're going to talk about these factors specifically with our children. What are symptoms that we might see, behavior changes that we can understand that our children might be experiencing anxiety, maybe more than we realized, and what are some coping skills we can teach them so that they can have awareness and they can actually self-teach themselves as well as make it a family dialogue. So come on back for part 2 again. Thank you for joining us for Balance Redefined Radio. I'm Connie Sokol, and check out part 2.